and some attention. Okay, well, I don't see anyone in chat, but I can see there are a couple of you waiting. So I'm just going to get going. Hey, guys. So in this live stream, we're going to deal with really two sections that sort of dealt with in the title. The one is this juror that's come forward. This is apparently for real this time. I think he appeared on ABC News, but he didn't give his juror number, or that wasn't revealed, and he's also asked for his identity to be withheld as well. So it's kind of like he wants his privacy protected, and then he's given his kind of opinion. So I'm going to take you through an article that appeared on Rolling Stone, where it basically just deals with the statement that the juror made. So we're going to deal with that, and then we're going to deal with what I think is quite a fascinating topic, which is why do so many women support Johnny Depp? Like, it's almost like no women at all support Amber Heard, or like 1% do. What's going on there? Is it just because Johnny is an incredibly charming guy? Is it because Amber's just absolutely not credible? What is the psychology there? And I'm going to discuss it with you guys because I'm fascinated by that. Like, to me, I couldn't really wrap my head around it. I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And I was sort of studying it. I was trying to figure it out. And then I finally came upon an analysis that really made sense. And so I want to put the ball in your court and see what you guys think of this analysis, see if it resonates with you, see if it lands with you guys, right? Okay, so let's just see who's here. I know this was a bit short notice. Timmy, can you settle down? Bria, thanks for making it. Bria, of course, was part of the live chat just the other day. That's a really good conversation. Jenny's here, Git from Sweden, good to see you. Stardust, Donna McLeod, Happy Face says she acted like a criminal who's gotten away with something. Okay. Terry Dean, good to see you as well. Okay, so looking at the voting, I see 26 of you have voted. There's more than twice that number in chat right now. If you haven't voted, make sure you do. When I looked at the poll for the first time, just as this live started, it looked like it was like 50-50, and now it's sort of gone over to 75%, 73% are saying, I agree with the juror, right? So I want to just examine that and then see if you can follow my reasoning, okay? So at the moment, 76% just went to 75, but 76% say, yes, you agree with the juror that social media didn't have any impact and we followed the evidence. That's really the question. Sorry, evidence is missing a D. I think I put a C instead of a D, but anyway, you know, it's evidence. 29, now it's 19% are saying they don't agree with the juror, and I guess 3% are saying, was the juror asleep or awake during the trial? Okay, so a couple more of you voted. There's still at least 20 of you, I think, who could still vote, but definitely almost a majority voting, yes, you agree with the juror. I'm gonna give you like a spoiler alert. I'm not sure if I agree with the juror, and I'll explain why. Okay, so I see Cotton Stars here. He asks, what's the psychology? So, yeah, we are going to deal with that after we deal with the juror. I also want to talk about the next trial by TikTok, but I'm not sure if we'll have time in this particular live stream. I don't really want to be on for too long. It already feels a bit like where angels fear to tread. Okay, so Nisi, good to see you here as well. Nisi says, I'll participate as much as I can. Bria says something about catching up. TMM, hi from Boston. Zircon says, I haven't heard statements. Okay, well, I'll read them out to you. And then Onesie's here, good to see you. Okay, so let's get started. I'm reading from a Rolling Stone article. I'm obviously not going to read the whole article, but what I am going to do is I'm going to summarize what the juror said, right? So the article in Rolling Stone is titled, Juror in Johnny Depp Trial Says Amber Heard's Testimony Didn't Add Up. And then the jury believed she was the aggressor, right? And then it also refers to this juror being unnamed and that the testimony was filled with crocodile tears and that she seemed to be able to, she seemed to be flicking a switch on her emotions, right? So now we're going to go into what this juror actually said, sort of verbatim. Sorry, I thought so it was on Good Morning America. It was a male juror that went on to Good Morning America. And this male juror spoke about what influenced him, what swayed him, what convinced him one way or the other, right? And so he said, for example, he said, a lot of Amber's story didn't add up, right? And then he went on to say the following. This is quoting from what he said. He said, it didn't come across as believable. It seemed like she was able to flip the switch on her emotions. She would answer one question and she would be crying, and 2 seconds later, she would turn ice cold. It didn't seem natural. Okay, so now I want to refer back to that poll. The poll is, social media did not impact us. We followed the evidence. Do you agree with the anonymous juror, right? So we right now, 74% are saying yes, 22% are saying no. There's still quite a few of you that I think can still vote. But I want you to pay attention to the question in the poll and what this juror is actually saying, okay? I'll obviously give you a little bit of my thoughts, a little bit of my feedback a little bit further on. Just want to draw you guys into this so that you also think about it. I don't want to impose my thoughts onto you guys. I want you guys to think about it yourselves a little bit. So they say, he's talking about her emotions in terms of believable. And then, she would answer one question, be crying, 2 seconds later, she would be ice cold. And the juror was saying, didn't seem natural. In other words, in a way, he was kind of faulting her acting. It's like he was saying, she would act in a way that was perhaps convincing, and the next moment she would not be emotional. So it didn't seem right to him. Then he also said that some folks in the 7-person jury used the word crocodile tears, right? So while they were, I guess, deliberating, some of them said crocodile tears. Now, I guess he's not one of them, right? So I guess if he's saying some members of the jury used the word, I don't know whether he's one of them, but the way he says it sounds like he's saying other people said she was, having crocodile tears. You know what crocodile tears are? It's when you're fake crying, right? And that was a big thing on social media that, first of all, they said that there were no tears. And then they said she'd taken some kind of agent to make herself cry. And then she was sniffing cocaine. And so there were all sorts of things around that. So when she didn't get emotional, people were like, why isn't she crying? When she did cry, then they said, where are the tears, even though she's crying? And then they said, well, those are fake tears. And did she sniff something to make herself cry? I actually even had a lawyer say to me that, write a comment, say that in her experience as a lawyer, she'd actually used this tactic. And of course, this lawyer was completely against Amber Heard and basically said, I use that tactic as well to try and artificially make some of my clients cry on the stand. And then apparently one of the agents that this lawyer used, the judge was allergic to, and so she was actually caught out. And I thought that was, To be honest, I didn't think that was particularly amusing. I thought, wow, okay. But I then later showed her that the time where Amber sniffed the tissue was after you could actually see the tears. So that argument really didn't even work. Amy Hall, good to see you. So that's in terms of the crocodile tears. So we've now seen that this juror didn't like her emotions. She would be crying one moment, turning ice cold the next. He says it didn't seem natural. Then he talks about crocodile tears being mentioned, right? Now, let me take you back to the question in the poll. Social media did not impact us. We followed the evidence. Do you agree with the anonymous juror? Okay, at this point, we're at almost 60 votes, and about almost 80% of you are voting yes. Okay. So we're going to come back to this poll quite a few times. If you haven't voted, make sure you do. Let's go a bit further through this. Timmy, I'm going to let you... this dog... Timmy, can you try and just lie down and be settled? Okay. Then a little bit further down, the article goes on to say that the jury believed that Amber was the aggressor in the relationship. And then and this is another quote from the juror. They had their husband-wife arguments. They were both yelling at each other, and we obviously heard that. I don't think that makes either of them right or wrong. That's what you do when you get into an argument, I guess. But to rise to the level of what she was claiming, there wasn't enough or any evidence that really supported what she was saying. Now, I find this quite interesting. So he basically says this was just kind of typical husband and wife arguments. They were just yelling at each other, and that doesn't make either of them right or wrong. I'll talk about that in a moment, what he's saying. Then he says, and that's what you do when you get in an argument. Then he says, but to rise to the level of what she was claiming, there wasn't enough or any evidence that really supported what she was saying. I find that quite interesting where he says there wasn't enough, almost like he's saying there wasn't enough evidence. And then he sort of corrects himself to say, no, there wasn't any evidence. Let's just have a look at some of your comments. Jenny says Elaine was horrible. She seemed, this one was over her head. Elaine Byrne says Elaine was afraid of Camille and Amber should not have looked at the jury so much. The truth does not need convincing, and she was telling the truth by trying too hard to convince. Well, in the Jodi Arias case, the Jodi looked at the jury a lot. It's actually absolutely normal trial strategy. And in the cases that I've personally sat in on, and this is obviously where you have judge trials, Oscar Pistorius, Henry van Breda, Jason Roeder, they invariably all look at the judge when they give their answers, and they actually address the judge as well. So I think you must think about this in another way, is when you are presumably watching the trial, are you looking at Amber's face? Are you like looking to see, is she telling the truth? And are you like trying to read her expressions? And the same with Johnny Depp. But like just generally in true crime, do you sort of look at someone's face to try and get an idea of whether you believe them or not? And so what's quite odd here is the juror is saying, please don't look at me. And also I think he said, I'm not sure if he didn't look at her, but the fact that he said he was uncomfortable that she was looking at him makes me wonder, did you then not look at her? And it just kind of makes me think, the way I understand true crime, I mean, don't you sort of really look at somebody and try and figure out, you know, like almost like a lie detector? Aren't you trying to figure out, is what you're saying true? And so you really sort of laser in on what they're saying and what they're doing. And so should Amber just not look at the jury? So if you had to play this over again, like if Amber could have another chance, so never look at the jury. Where must she look? Should she just look straight at the lawyer? Wouldn't the argument then be, well, if you're not looking at us, then are you too afraid to look at us? So I'm just wondering, it's like the same thing with the crying. If she cries, it's fake crying. If she doesn't cry, there's something wrong. If she looks at the jury, there's something wrong. But if she doesn't look at the jury, isn't there also something wrong? Terry says, I think jurors genuinely want to be observers, not the focus of attention. That's an interesting point. But if I apply it to when I've sat in court, you often see the judge and the perpetrator, the accused, looking at one another, right? And if you think about something like the Chris Watts case where he gives the sermon on the porch, should he not look into the camera? Now, obviously he's guilty, but should he not look into the camera and should you not look at his face? To me, it just runs counter to what I know. It's like, don't look at somebody when they're trying to appeal to you that you either believe them or not. I don't know. Linda says it was the way she looked at them. Okay. And someone else says she was something lying. Okay. Well, that's what the jury thought. Okay. Michaela says dysfunctional relationship means both were unhinged to a varying degree. Okay, so we're now up to 81% of you saying that you agree with the anonymous juror. Okay. Zircon says Amber was staring. Well, each time she kind of had to turn her head, so I'm not sure if that's staring. It looks like I may have a mostly unfriendly crowd here on YouTube. Lily Shaw says, I support Johnny because I watched the whole trial and Amber was discredited. Okay. Sarah Moon says, just because Johnny Depp was a handsome man and a good actor doesn't mean he's incapable of despicable things. Okay, that's an interesting comment. Sugeti Norna, reading the testimony shows discrepancies. Who are you talking about there? Jenny Friedman says, Amber Heard looked at the jury to get them to believe her, too much looking at them. Wonder if I would feel uncomfortable. Yeah, she did look at the jury. She was looking at them to actually to try and get rapport. She was trying to achieve a connection with them. She's trying to, gain rapport. And obviously, I think it was a situation where they didn't want her to look at them and probably they didn't want to look at her. So then one could really say perhaps her lawyer should have said to her, don't look at them anymore or look at them less or something like that. I think one's got to be quite sensitive to what's happening in the trial, to like observing, and then you've got to adapt accordingly, Nisi says, damned if you do, damned if you don't. How does one act? Okay. So now we're up to 82%. Okay, that is pretty high. Okay, so the article goes on to also talk about the missteps that the juror highlighted. He didn't like the fact that Amber said she was going to give money to charity and then didn't really give much of it away at all, and then used quite a big word. He said, that's disingenuous not to do that. I find it quite ironic that she was given 7 million in the divorce. She elected to give all the 7 million away. And then when she was sued, it's like, well, for example, she now currently owes, I think, 8.35 million. So if you assume that she still got the 7 million divorce settlement, she still can't pay that. And it seems almost like the jury is saying, you know what, you should have paid the 7 million, and you know what, we're going to ask you to pay another 8.5 million. And it's just like, okay, so I don't know if you're following what I'm saying. It's like, so you must give all your money away, and then we're still going to, take some more away. The other thing that I find a bit odd is, if you're going to sanction someone, you've got to sanction them proportionately. Well, that's what I believe. So in other words, if someone is let's say, millionaire or billionaire, then in order for the punishment to feel a certain way, you give a certain percentage of their wealth, right? And so if someone is, let's say has got $5 million, it's ridiculous expecting them to pay 50 million, because it's just not going to happen. So you want to really punish them in a way that is, realistic, right? And that's something that I think was a bit unrealistic from their perspective. I also think if you're going to use the word disingenuous, I've already said this in the past. If Amber was going to pay the amount to this charity, and I believe at the time that she said it, a lot of you are going to really hate me for saying this. So, like, get ready, take your guns out, point it at the screen, aim it, and get ready to fire. I believe at the time that she said it, she meant it. And then circumstances changed. And you could say she should have gone public and said, I can't give you the money anymore, whatever. But I don't know how many people would have done that. But nevertheless, I think she probably meant it when she said it, and then circumstances did change. The other side of it is, I don't know how many of you out there have given millions to charity, because I think in the end she did give, what was it, 100,000, 200,000. And then also, not that it really matters, but her one boyfriend, I think, Elon Musk gave, what was it, $500,000? I can't really remember. But that counts for something, I think. Anyway, this juror is saying it was disingenuous. I'm really upset that this money wasn't given. And then I think this is a valid argument, and it's dealing with the evidence. And this is where I think it's important to deal with the evidence. The juror wanted to know why, if Amber was in an abusive relationship, why would she give Johnny Depp a large knife? I think that is totally a reasonable question. That does really make sense. So that definitely does make sense. Although I think you can also say all of us have done stupid things in our lives. All of us have sometimes gone back to someone when we shouldn't, or it's not really working out, or perhaps even broken up rashly, or whatever. And then the part that I really want to deal with is where he says, this is the part that's really interesting. So he says, in the aftermath of the verdict, this is according to Rolling Stone, Amber Heard's lawyers blamed social media in part for swaying the jury's decision. And so they asked the juror to respond to that. So essentially it's a question of, what do you think about the fact that social media could have played a role here? And so the jury kind of responded, or the juror responded that 3 of the 7 jurors didn't even have a Twitter account. Now, what I find interesting with that is that he specifically refers to Twitter. He doesn't say something like, no, it's not true. We paid attention to the case. We didn't pay attention to social media. He specifically highlights Twitter. And if you think about it, Twitter played a major role, certainly from my perspective. Twitter played a major role where you saw all of these hashtags trending. And right now, I think Amber Heard is a narcissist is trending right now. I think yesterday it was Amber Heard is a psychopath, and the day before, I'm not sure if it was Amber Heard is a liar, but you've had these and it's not so much anymore Johnny Depp is innocent or Johnny Depp got justice. It's Amber Heard, fill in the slur, fill in the insult kind of thing. So it's kind of become not so much loving Johnny Depp, but hating Amber Heard. But specifically on Twitter, that's where you see it really, really clearly. There's also obviously been a lot of hashtagging and all that social media on TikTok. But I do find it interesting that this particular juror said 3 of the 7 jurors didn't even have a Twitter account. Well, that must mean 4 of them did, which is most of them. So 4 members of the jury did have a Twitter account. And what that would mean is you might say, I'm not going to pay attention to social media regarding this trial. And then you go home and you open Twitter and you respond to your messages, or you just open Twitter and there you see these trending hashtags. There they are. And it's without even wanting to pay attention, it's Amber Heard is a liar, Amber Heard is a psychopath, Amber Heard or Amber Turd, all this kind of stuff. And so you don't even, as a jury, you don't even need to try and look around. It's going to be kind of in your face. And so it's like, well, the whole world thinks this. Who am I to disagree with it? But that's where the influence can start. I think it's a very important point here to say only 3 of the 7 jurors didn't have a Twitter account. Well, that means 4 did. And the fact that he highlights Twitter. Of course, there were other areas where the Depp versus Heard case was very prominent, and that was YouTube. And YouTube was also incredibly one-sided, and I can vouch for that. Because if I said anything remotely negative about Johnny Depp or remotely positive about Amber Heard, I got punished, and I'm actually still getting punished for that. So it's very hard. I think it would have been very hard to go into YouTube and just innocently, maybe I want to watch the trailer to Thor: Love and Thunder or Top Gun or something like that. You're going to see in your recommendations the same thing. Amber Heard is a liar, and crocodile tears and whatnot, right? Without even looking, it's going to be right there. And they were going home every day for 6 weeks. So I think the question should be not, did you go onto social media to research this case? The question is, did you go on social media once during the 6 weeks? That's all it takes. Did you go into social media once? What do you think the answer is to that? Lily says, no, Nick. Amber lied on TV that the charities were paid already. Yeah, I saw that. She was on TV and she did say that under the assumption that it was being paid, that it would be paid. Also, she gave the first 100,000, as JD Lawyer said, why do you support Amber? So there you go. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the not so much why does one support Amber, but why do so many women support Johnny Depp? That's really the question. And I think it's quite an interesting thing there. Lily asks about, do I support Amber? I don't really feel like I support Amber or Johnny. I feel like I support the first verdict, the verdict in the UK trial, and then the subsequent verdict. That's what I support. In other words, to me, the legal thing is quite simple. And I'm a little bit confused why it's not so simple in America. I don't know. I'm not Team Johnny. I'm not Team Amber. And I'm even starting to feel like I'm not sure if I believe in justice really anymore. I think justice has become a joke, to be honest. So we come back to this question. Social media did not impact us. We followed the evidence. Do you agree with the anonymous juror? And so here's my problem with what he says. He says social media did not impact us, but 4 members of the jury were on Twitter. He also says we followed the evidence, and yet in his own arguments on Good Morning America, he keeps talking about Amber's emotion, right? Let me just say that again. The question here is, do you agree with the anonymous juror when he says, basically one of the questions is, we followed the evidence? Well, when he talks about following the evidence, all he really talks about is Amber's emotions. That's not following evidence, right? And he's also said, it's like, we followed the evidence, but I didn't like how she was crying and looking at us on the stand. And so I'm also not going to look at her. Well, then you don't actually know what those emotions are. If at some point you've just stopped looking, and I think you would stop looking if you've been looking at social media and it's like, Amber Heard is a liar. It's like, well, I've already made up my mind. So I'm not going to look at you because then you're going to see I've made up my mind. I don't need any further information. That's the other thing that I think is quite important is normally in a court case, the verdict comes right at the end. So in other words, you absorb all the information, right? I'm talking about, I've sat in trials where you don't know what the result of the trial is going to be until it comes out. Whereas in this case, the result came out even before Amber Heard gave a testimony. And also judging from what the jury is saying here, and also judging from what it sounds like he was responding, was he was already turned off halfway through. Because she cried right in the beginning on the very first, I think the second day that she was on the stand, but the first day she was also like quite emotional. I don't think she cried. I'm not sure if she cried in the first session, but it was fairly early on. And so if you're saying, oh, those are crocodile tears, well then, are you really going to pay attention to the rest? No, I've made up my mind. So in other words, on day 2 of Amber's defense, you've decided, actually, I've heard enough. I don't believe her emotions, right? Now, the part that I also find a bit strange is Johnny Depp was calmer and he was emotionally stable, but I thought he was the one who was actually abused here. She was the aggressor. He's the one who's lost everything and he's not emotional about it. I find that a bit odd. Like, so if a man is treated in a bad way, he's not going to be emotional about it, and that's fine. I don't know, I find that a bit odd. But we're not really here to talk about Johnny Depp's testimony. We're here to attack Amber Heard, as far as I know. So I'm sure mods, you're going to be having a tough time here. I saw what you said, Nisi. Let's just see. Lily says, Nick, I love your channel, but I do believe you are biased. All of your videos are pro-Amber. Okay. Odette Popco, did you even watch the full trial? Most of us watched every single minute of it. If you didn't watch the trial day by day, I don't think you have any idea. Odette, I didn't watch the whole trial. I certainly missed. I was actually on holiday in the beginning, and I was actually vowed that I wasn't going to cover this trial at all. But I did watch all of Johnny Depp's testimony and all of Amber Heard's. I suppose you could say that doesn't make you an expert, or you don't know what you're talking about. But I examined what he said and decided what I thought, and then I looked at what she said and decided what I thought. To be honest, I didn't have time to watch every single minute, all day, every day, the way you guys did. And I also spent probably less than half an hour looking at other analysis on other YouTube channels. And I didn't go on TikTok at all, other than to look at what this fake juror said. I must have find it very interesting that what the fake juror said and what apparently this real juror said is actually similar. I don't know if you guys noticed that. What the fake juror said on TikTok broadly corresponded with what the real juror said. I mean, for example, he said, I felt very uncomfortable with Amber looking at me. I thought what she was saying wasn't true, blah, 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 blah. It's very, very, very similar. So one wonders whether the real juror, after the trial, didn't hear about what the fake juror was saying and think, yeah, that actually makes sense. I'm going to say that. Just kind of an interesting thing. Lily says, Nick, were you influenced by social media? I'm not quite sure what that means. I was influenced by social media where I said I don't agree with social media. So I don't know, is that being influenced by it? Wow, I've got this one person here that's been really supportive. Thanks, Elaine. Elaine says, this channel is amazing, fair, just, and fundamentally right. Well, I don't know if I'm fundamentally right, but it says not biased one way or another. Well, there are a lot of, most people here I think would disagree with you. Moon Rain says, some women use the fact that a man is not supposed to hit a woman and abuse him. Okay, so we now got 84% yeses. 126 votes. If you haven't voted, make sure that you do. But do you guys follow me? Like you may disagree with me, but do you follow? I'm saying you may disagree that about this, that, and the next thing. But do you agree that if the juror is saying we follow the evidence, but then in order to rationalize the verdict, he keeps talking about Amber's emotions? That's a bit of a mismatch. It doesn't align. It doesn't. They don't go together. He's not really talking about. If he's saying we follow the evidence, and I think you should give examples of the evidence. And the only example he really gave is a sort of a non. Like saying she gave him a knife. It's not really dealing with the fabric of the argument, right? It's not really dealing with, well, this, that, or the other. Okay, so that's that. I do think that. So there's another thing I need to point out here that can potentially help Amber in an appeal. It is where the juror says the following. When he says, ultimately, what I think is truthful is that they were both abusive to each other. I don't think that makes either of them right or wrong. But to rise to the level of what she was claiming, there wasn't enough or any evidence that really supported what she was saying. That sounds to me like the juror is talking about mutual abuse. And Rottenborn said during closing arguments, this is a legal factor. This isn't Rottenborn's argument about what's legal. It's legal anyway. Rottenborn was saying, even if there was mutual abuse, the question is, Amber said that Johnny Depp abused her, right? Even if Amber abused Johnny, even if it was mutual abuse, Amber wins, right? That's the legal standard. In other words, she wrote something, he's accusing her of defamation, but if she hit him and he hit her back, then that's abuse from his side, even if she's the aggressor. And that's nevertheless, then he should win. She should have won the case under that narrow thing. And so I think in an appeal situation, I think they could definitely argue that this juror didn't really understand how to apply the law. I think they were applying, I didn't believe her, and I think she was the aggressor, and I don't really like her. And so that's how it was applied, right? I think it's like applying, I like you more, so I'll find in your favor more. So it's like, I like you more, so I'll give you 10 million. I don't like you much, so I'll give you 2 million. It does sound like they think there was mutual abuse, and if there was, you shouldn't have found in this way. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go on to the next thing. I'm really afraid to look at chat. It's quite triggering and whatever. Okay, so we're now going to go on to the next thing, which is the psychology. And then I think I was going to go take this a bit further, but I think I'm going to stop there. Why are so many women supporting Johnny Depp? What do you guys think is the answer to that? I'm going to put this question in chat. why are so many women supporting Johnny Depp? Thanks, Robbie. Thanks for that. Jenny Friedman says the audio tapes are so damaging. Well, my response to that is, were the audio tapes played during the trial? And if the answer is no, I'm not quite sure what audio tapes you're referring to, but if you're referring to the 8-hour audio tapes that weren't played during the trial, then you are going beyond the trial. You should really pay attention to what's in the trial, kind of thing. So Joan of Arc says his charisma. Stardust says we can see through Amber's lies. Natural Ginger says women know how nasty women can be. There's a good answer. Interesting answer. Yeah, we don't really like to use all caps here because it seems like shouting. So you might be used to doing it at other channels, but try not to use it here. Odette, see if you can... Oh, okay, so you're talking about the audio tapes that were admitted. Okay. So do you think there's only one person that was shouting in that? Yeah, but I'm not quite sure what you guys are referring to. There's like 8 hours of audio that wasn't, not the whole 8 hours was played. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, so if you guys are gonna shout at me like in the chat, I'm gonna kick you guys out, right? If you can't have a proper conversation without 10 exclamation marks, then you don't belong here. Okay. So I've just kicked somebody out. If you want to shout at me, then you might as well just go out, right? If you feel like you want to shout, just leave. If you want to use lots of exclamation marks, just leave. Wanty says, from the beginning, I knew it was going to be a shitstorm since the YouTube unnaturally exploded in favor of Johnny, almost as if they were paid to be pro-Johnny. Okay, so Getty Nonna says, many content creators listen to the tapes in its entirety. Yeah, I'm sure. Yvonne, good to see you here. Joe Huck. Yeah, I think what almost everyone seems to be forgetting is she's trying to lure him and to trap him and to hook him by secretly recording him, and she's trying to record him saying the worst possible thing. And she's trying to damn him. She's trying to kind of trap him, right? And he's doing the same thing, right? So they are both trying to manipulate one another. So you can theoretically imagine if what you want to do is get somebody else on tape, they don't know they're being recorded, and you want to get the most damaging self-disclosures, well, then you try and provoke them. And what you can also do is then you edit out what you say or whatever, and then can you see what I'm saying? And but from both sides, it's not really a good, it's not really good evidence from both sides, in my opinion. Okay, so let's go on to this thing. Why are so many women or survivors supporting Johnny Depp? Now, this was something that really interested me because I was like, I've covered many trials. I've written about Jodi Arias. I've written about Amanda Knox. I've written about the Ramseys, the McCanns, Casey Anthony, and even when it's the most hated woman in America previously, like Casey Anthony or Jodi Arias, you often find there's still quite a sizable group that support this person. With Jodi Arias, she had kind of a fan club. She kind of had a website of supporters, right? Another good example is Stephen Avery. Stephen Avery, there's a certain proportion of people that think he's guilty, and there's a sizable amount that think he's innocent. Another good example is Damien Eccles of the West Memphis Three. I don't think I've ever seen it absolute like this, where it's like 99.9%, right? Where it's like men and women, everybody, just this massive majority believe Johnny Depp and they think Amber Heard's a liar. And I was like, wow, where does this come from? What's going on here? Like, why is this happening? And there's some of you will say, because it's obvious, Amber was lying. Well, if it is so obvious, why did the UK judge find in her favor, in the favor of the Sun? Why did the UK judge, again, in terms of the appeal, also find in their favor? And then also, why has Hollywood not changed its mind on Johnny Depp? If it was so obvious, why has Hollywood not said, we're sorry, we'll take Johnny back? Why has that not happened, right? So it was really a mystery to me. And I was sort of looking at this kind of going, I actually don't understand this. Like, what is going on? And there were certain things that did make sense. And I knew there was a certain amount of pulling the strings of social media, and we'll get to that. But I think the answer to the question is, why are so many women supporting Johnny Depp? I think the short answer, this is my opinion, if you disagree, let me know. But I think the short answer is denial. And just think about that for a second. Before you get really angry and before you load your whatever, just think about what I'm going to say. Why are so many women supporting Johnny Depp? Is the answer denial? And as I say, if you'd asked me this a few days or weeks ago during a live or randomly, I would have admitted to not having the answer. I've been in a few extremely unpleasant situations within the relationship sense. And so why didn't I identify with Johnny Depp? Like, I've definitely been in some horrible scenarios. So why didn't I be like, I really don't like Amber and I really like Johnny? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I project blame or transfer resentment onto Amber Heard? And so is that because of something that's different between me and women? Or is there something wrong with me? What's kind of going on? And then I found an article that addressed this question, I thought, in an intelligent and rational manner. And I'm going to put a link to this article in chat so you guys can read it. It's from Harper's Bazaar. And I thought it was such a fantastic commentary on what you're talking about. So if you don't want to listen to me and you're like, I don't like him and he's not credible and, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you might want to just read that article on your own time and just think about it. You don't have to accept it, or you can believe some of it, but I think it is food for thought. I think it is interesting. And I think it is a conversation that's not being had around this case. Like, I thought this case would be a good opportunity to talk about certain issues. And it seems like it's all been drowned away by this sort of chant, like, Amber turd, Amber turd, Amber turd, Amber is a liar, Amber. And it's just like almost like we in kindergarten. And it's like, when do you actually discuss stuff beyond these trending hashtags and these repeated things, Anyway, Nisi says, I must run. Thank you for taking on such a polarizing topic. Thanks, mods and everyone, for being here. We can share opinions and not need to bully JD or AH. Have a great day. Thanks, Nisi. Okay, so going back to the article, it says, as much as Heard's critics might want us to believe that she lost some survivor support because she's a liar or a bad victim, it's actually pretty common for women to doubt other women, even if they too have experienced violence. And this is mentioned in a general sense. They're saying it's actually pretty common for women to doubt other women in general, even if these other women have also experienced violence. So what's going on with that? Right. So I'm going to put this comment in chat just for you guys to sort of ruminate on if you're interested. Terry says, Nick, many people don't believe Amber would not call themselves a Johnny supporter. Okay. Interesting point. Annika says the UK case is something different, a totally different case. I don't think it is, and I don't think you know a lot about that case, Annika. If you think it's totally different, then I'm going to draw your attention to this. I'm going to draw your attention to this. It's an article dealing with how the judge ruled on 14 of the alleged assaults, right? And you must read this article and then tell me again that this is totally different to the case you're talking about. I did a previous live where I compared the Sun article to which the Sun won, by the way. But I compared the Sun article to Amber Heard's article. I compared the length of both articles. I compared the titles of both articles. The title of the Sun article had Johnny's name in it. I compared the photos in the two articles. The Sun article had a photo of Johnny and a photo of Amber with a bruise on her face, or excuse me, a made-up bruise made with makeup on her face, as some of you would have it. So, and the Sun won that particular case, right? And so it's comparing the article in the Sun, which the Sun won, to Amber Heard's article, which doesn't even mention Johnny, and the Sun won. And so you should really compare apples with apples, but it was dealing with the same thing. What are these allegations based on? What was the same thing? So Jenny says, I think the UK judge was against drugs and something jaded him. Okay, so let's go back to Harper's Bazaar. So this is the position of this writer, right? And you might be you might be a woman who says, no, I believe other women. I believe all women. I just don't believe Amber Heard. That's what we really want to test here. We want to test that psychology. So this person says, it's actually pretty common for women to doubt other women, even if they too have experienced violence. Now, I think one reason why this whole area, this whole psychology was so inexplicable to me was because in the Chris Watts case, a huge amount of women rallied to support Shanann Watts. I don't know if you guys remember that. I don't know how many of you here know true crime and are familiar with the Chris Watts case. Let's just do a quick poll. How many of you guys know about the Chris Watts case? So I know I'm talking to folks who know about it. If you know about it, just say that you do, I suppose. You can put a 1. If you know about the Chris Watts case, put a 1. If you don't know about it, put a 2. Louise says, I sadly know about it. Eye of the Storm says yes. 1, 1, 1. Okay, so a lot of you do know about it. Okay, so that's great. There's 1, 2. Amy, do you really not know about the Chris Watts case? I've written 14 books about it. But anyway, so it's a case where Chris Watts killed his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. And even the smallest criticism against Shanann Watts was people kind of were rallied to her support in an incredible way. And I guess the difference between Amber Heard and Shanann Watts is that Shanann was the perfect victim. I didn't think she was, but many women did. She was pregnant. She was a good mom. There were lots of photos of her on social media holding her kids, talking about family values and all sorts of things. And obviously she didn't deserve to die. But all of that's true, except Shanann actually wasn't perfect. However, her social media was pretty convincing, and that apparently was enough, right? There were things that were very not happy in the family. That they'd been bankrupt 2 times, and she was part of I'm not going to go into the business that she was into, but didn't seem to be working. And I mean, she was actually away from home, like for 5 weeks. And then even the weekend before, she was away from home, working to try and kind of save her family and save her marriage kind of thing. And anyway, any criticism you leveled at Shanann was vigorously defended, right? As I say, because I think she was seen as the perfect victim. as this innocent victim. And I'm not saying she wasn't innocent, but she was just seen as completely innocent. And because she's completely innocent, anything you say is an attack on her. And how dare you say anything that's an attack on her, kind of thing. In Depp versus Heard social media, there was apparently more than enough reason to go anti-Heard. But there's also, I think, a wiring issue, a psychological marker causing people to all react the same way. And according to this article in Harper's Bazaar, this is quoting from the article, specifically survivors are experts in their experiences. Is there anyone who disagrees with that? Survivors are experts in their experiences. Nobody knows exactly what you thought, saw, and felt besides you, right? You, the best expert in terms of your experience. But they are not necessarily experts in all experiences of gender-based violence. Do you agree with that, at least? So let me read that again. Survivors are experts in their experiences, but they are not necessarily experts in all experiences of gender-based violence. And I think they think that they are. They think if I've been a victim, then I'm an expert in all situations, right? And then the writer goes on to say, and the writer's name is Nicole Badira from Harper's Bazaar. This was written May 26th, 2022. I'll put another link in the description in case you've missed it. You're welcome to follow in the article as I'm going through it. But she goes on to say, this is a problem. The tactics perpetrators use to perpetrate are varied and often reflect the privileges they and their victims hold. Victims, too, react differently to violence based on the resources they have to resist. So I don't really know whether what is happening is women who are victims of something looking into Depp versus Heard and saying, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Well, are you a multimillionaire? Are you a celebrity? And are you a frequent cocaine user? Because if you are, then you can look into that in a sensible way. But if you're not all of those things, I'm not sure if you can. So if you're frequently high on drugs and drunk and appear in movies and all that kind of thing, then you can speak expertly about how your experience confers on you expertise to tell whether someone's lying or not. I think you can't get away from the fact, and this is something that I think the jurors missed, or this particular juror missed. I think you can't get away from the fact that because you got an actor on the stand, or an actor on the stand, you're always going to have that issue of, are they acting or are they genuine? And I think the actor has that as well. The actor wants to convey, think about it like, imagine it's you and something did happen to you, but you're an actor. Do you not act or do you act? And how do you tell the difference between the two? Which one is which? I can tell you, having sat in on court cases, it feels a lot like acting to me. I'm talking about somebody who isn't an actor on the stand talking about what has happened, and I'm looking at it and saying, I don't believe that, I think that's fiction. Well, then that's a performance, right? Equally, maybe not equally to the full extent equally, but I think to a large extent, if you are innocent of something, I mean, here I am, I'm trying to make a case to you. Am I acting? Well, I am trying to speak effectively. I am trying to be emphatic. And that doesn't mean it's disingenuous, but some part of that is me trying to perform in a way that's going to be convincing or compelling, at least to some of you, right? So I don't know where you can sort of take them apart completely and say, oh, you shouldn't be acting. So in a scenario where someone's supposed to cry, then how do you cry without, should you rather not cry? I don't know. It seems to be a really difficult thing. anyway, so let me read that again. This is a problem. The tactics perpetrators use to perpetrate are varied and often reflect the privileges they and their victims hold. Now think about the tactics where you are a millionaire and you have a lot of influence and you're a celebrity and you're much, much wealthier than this other person you're with, and so on and so on and so on. You've got this whole pedigree of films around you. But the person that you're with is also a lot younger than you, and that on its own can make you feel insecure. Just the fact that she's younger, the youthfulness, it's, a young actor versus an old actor. It doesn't really matter how famous the one is compared to the other. A young actor's got more potential than a very old actor. An old actor has just so many roles left to them. A young actor's beginning there to take the world by storm. And obviously Amber had with, the movie she made, Aquaman, made more money than any of Johnny Depp's films. I'm talking about the total box office was more than any of his Pirates films, Alice in Wonderland, all of those. And does that make him feel insecure, potentially? Wouldn't it make you feel insecure if the person you were with was earning more than you were or becoming more popular than you were, right? Wouldn't that create this kind of imbalance? Anyway, this article goes on to say, when survivors universalize their experiences, they struggle to emphasize with victims who do not share their positionality in society. So what she's getting at here is they say, if you're a survivor, I don't really know if the folks in chat have experienced abuse. I would presume that you must have, but I don't know if maybe that's universalizing. But I don't know whether everyone in chat is doing that and kind of saying, Amber's not at all like me. I did this, I did that, I did that. Well, again, you're not a celebrity, you're not a multimillionaire, you don't have the need to keep certain secrets from the public because that's part of what being a celebrity is. So let me put this in chat as well. When survivors universalize the experience, they struggle to empathize with victims who do not share their positionality in society. And I really don't think anyone shares Amber's positionality in society. Unless you're a movie star and unless you drink every day and you're a multimillionaire. Okay, so is that gone off? Let's try again. Okay. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Eye of the Storm says De Niro wouldn't agree about not getting jobs. So do you think old actors get just as much jobs as young actors? So do you think there are lots of roles for like old sort of grandpa type actors? Christina says, I'm happy to not be anything like Amber Heard. Okay, but then you can't put yourself in her shoes, right? If you're nothing like her, you can't say, yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. I also think a big argument can be made that nothing really makes a lot of sense when you are on drugs or alcohol, especially if you're addicted. So you are by nature irrational and paranoid when you're on those substances. And so I think having this really intellectual conversation about behavior that's supposed to be this way or that way, when it's incredibly messy, when two drug addicts are in a relationship, it's incredibly messy. There's a lot of neglect. I mean, when you heard about the dogs messing all over the house and it lies around all day, that's actually the reality of what it was like in that Eastman building. Not the first thing that would come to mind, right? You wouldn't like imagine, like if you imagined, wow, imagine if I was married to Johnny Depp, would be this amazing life. Well, there would also be dog poo lying around, like a lot. And other sort of bodily substances. It's just par for the course. Karina says most decent men would never put a woman in such a compromising position. One thing I thought was interesting was the way during the trial, none on the Depp side said, please, those of my supporters, please don't send death threats to Amber. Please don't abuse her online or whatever. That was just not done. And so the fact that that didn't happen, does that say anything? Does that just say that they shrugged their shoulders? Does that say that they didn't know about it? Or does that say that they actually tacitly supported it? What do you think it says? Because it came up during the trial. She said, I've been getting death threats every day, etc., etc. And Annika says, sorry, I forgot there's even photos with the full proof. I was shocked, stunned, and heartbreaking to see this. Amy says, Nick really opens my eyes and mind, makes me think more. Susan says, it was found that Amber used much more drugs and alcohol than Johnny. What's your source for that? Did they take a blood sample? How do you kind of justify saying something like that? Because the other side of the story is when Johnny went to films, he arrived late, so it was affecting his lifestyle was affecting his work. Was that also true with Amber? And I think an argument can be made that it was with one of their movies. I can't remember the name now, but there was a movie where they both appeared in together. Was it London Fields, where something seemed to go wrong in that movie, and there was even litigation within that film. So it's quite interesting. Julie says, Depp had 30 plus years of cumulative substance damage to his brain and body ahead of Amber, and it shows. Thanks a lot, Onesie. Susan says the auditor had records of what was bought. Okay. So going back to this article, we just spoke about survivors universalizing their experiences. They struggle to empathize with victims who do not share their positionality in society. Then it goes on to say, we saw this dynamic on display during the #MeToo movement as wealthy white women's stories dominated the media cycle, as if those experiences represented every survivor, but they didn't. And the result was that the gains of #MeToo have not necessarily extended to women of color or to poverty and working class women whose stories are still untold and whose experiences are still misunderstood. Now, I must say, when I read this really rang true. This really resonated with me, because it's one thing to say when survivors universalize their experiences, they struggle to empathize. Okay, but what does that mean? What are we talking about? Well, this is the example. The example is we have wealthy white women sharing their stories, and then everyone understands and everyone empathizes. But then it doesn't go further. It doesn't extend to women of color or poor women or working class women, right? And quite an interesting example of this idea of, can you understand what it's like for these people? For me, is the Summer Wells case. So you might think, yes, this family don't have a lot of money, right? You might think this family don't have a lot of money, maybe they don't have a job, but they're basically just like us. It's not the case. It's not the case. The circumstances are completely different. The levels of deprivation and stress and the baggage especially is totally, totally different. And we tend to think that someone that we thinking about or talking about is just like us, or is basically just like us, or if they're not just like us, that they generally are, they're people, so they're just like us. No. Some things are quite similar, like one's emotional reality is to some extent similar, but your lived experience and your motivations and your attitude to reality are totally, totally different. So I think the privileged position of Deb and Heard was what put me off even paying cursory attention to the trial in the opening days. The fact that these were two movie stars, sorry about that. The fact that these were two movie stars, millionaires, party animals, whatever. And to be honest, I'd never even heard of Amber Heard until the trial. I'd seen her in Aquaman without knowing her name was Amber Heard. But I didn't even want to pay attention to the trial because it's two privileged people bickering with one another. And I thought, I've really got no interest in that. And I still don't really have a terribly much interest in it. I am interested in what it says about us. And I am interested in how LawTube and the true crime community and justice seems to have been turned upside down by this in a way that I find very worrying. When I did watch the trial, and I must say, I really struggled to watch Johnny. I was like, obviously not starstruck. I was like, gee, when's he going to finish off here? He was speaking slowly. He seemed to be thinking about every word. I saw two bickering, spoiled, entitled millionaires and hedonists. The level of partying was like off the charts. And they were both going for their relative pounds of flesh. I thought they were both quite selfish. And I thought it really had nothing to do with me or any of us. And it's the same reason I couldn't care less about the British royals other than Princess Diana, or even politics in my own country. None of it really reflects my standards or resonates with my life. That is how I saw it. But obviously a lot of you thought this resonates with me, or maybe this doesn't. In the end, I only paid attention to Depp versus Heard because it was resonating with many of you, and I was trying to understand that. And to some extent, it was related to my channel. A lot of my channel were off to watch Depp versus Heard. And I thought, well, this is a law case. This is about true crime. And the fact that it's resonating with so many people, that's important. And so the question is, why is it? That's the part that I wanted to try and understand. And the answer is I couldn't actually understand. I was like, coming back to the same question, why do so many women support Johnny Depp? And then I came upon this article from Harper's Bazaar. And now let's go back to it. And this is quoting from the article. Even when survivors see elements of their own story in another survivor's narrative, they may still attempt to distance themselves by looking for tiny differences in how they navigated violence. And to do so, they rely on something scholars call the just world hypothesis. The just world hypothesis is the belief that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, or that the world is fundamentally just. And strangely, people are most likely to invoke the just world hypothesis when the reality before them is unfair. It's a way of denying the inequalities in our society, especially when they make us feel threatened. Wow, that blew my mind. When I read that, it really blew my mind because it was like, this actually makes sense. Right? So in case you missed that, and I'm going to put the sentence in chat so you can read it, even when survivors see elements of their own story in another survivor's narrative, so it's like, okay, so this also happened, they're still going to attempt to distance themselves by looking for tiny differences in how they navigated violence. And when they're doing this, they rely on what is called the just world hypothesis. It's this idea that we live in a just society. It's this idea that I'm a good person, and so good things happen to me, and this violence that happened to me, I didn't deserve, but you deserve it because of that difference with you and that difference with you and that difference with you, right? I'm a good person, and I didn't deserve what happened. You're not a good person, but what you got, you deserved. I'm better than you. I'm innocent. You different to me, you deserve it. Does that make sense? It's kind of a sensible nonsense that is being applied here. And it's all about denial. It's about saying, my reality makes sense, your reality doesn't. And what that is actually doing is rationalizing your reality. That's actually what it's all about. By undermining Amber Heard's reality, you are justifying your own by saying she's bad, I'm good. Do you think that that's correct, or do you think that that's just psychobabble? I'm not a woman, so I can't talk for you guys. I'm asking you guys, what do you think? Do you think it's psychobabble, or do you think there's an aspect to it that's quite interesting? Stephanie says, "Hey, all driving but listening in." Good to hear you. Good to know that you're out there, Stephanie, and listening. Eye of the Storm says, "She's an abuser. I can't identify with a woman who throws things and hits others." Not. I can't think of too many women who like what in their entire lives never throws anything and never hits anyone. If I think of my own mother, it may be a bad example, but I mean, if I think of my own mother, if I think of my own sister, can I honestly say that they've never hit anyone and never thrown anything? I don't know. Maybe you are all much better women. I don't know. Eye of the Storm says, "I never have." Well, so let me ask you, Eye of the Storm, have you ever been high? Have you ever, or how often have you been drunk? I don't know if you want to answer that. Eye of the Storm says, "I've been abused in all ways all my life. It's not natural for me to want to hit or throw." I think it is a natural instinct to want to defend yourself, though. I think if you're being hit again and again repeatedly, I think there's a natural instinct to want to defend yourself. Can I beg your indulgence and tell you a short little story about something that happened to me? I'd broken up with a girlfriend. She was outside my home. She didn't want to break up. She didn't want the relationship to end. And she was threatening to damage my car, like if I didn't talk to her. But I thought I was okay because there was a wall and the gate was closed. But the next thing, she actually jumped over the wall, and then I was really worried she was going to, do what she was going to say. And she seemed like literally out of control. She was like flailing, and she seemed totally emotionally out of control. And the impression I kind of got was that she's going to run into my home and just break everything. Like she's going to break everything that she could get hold of. And so as she sort of ran past me, I caught her and I held on to her. So she kind of had her back to me, looking outward, and I was holding on to her. And that's all I did. I just held on to her. And she bit into my forearm, and it kind of crunched like an apple. And I sort of felt the bite, and I sort of felt myself kind of tensing up with the teeth going into my arm. And at the same time, I kind of felt like I can't really let her go because she's going to. So even though she bit me, I just continued holding on to her. And eventually she did calm down, right? Stephanie says, "I've shoved and thrown a lot of stuff." Well, there's some honest disclosure there. It's okay to be wrong sometimes. It's okay to not be perfect and to make mistakes. It seems like everyone's perfect, and Amber Heard is the total scapegoat for everything that's wrong with the world. I'm wrong. I've been with people who've hurt me and whatever. There's a lot of messiness. I don't know why it's such a big deal not to just own up to it. So there was a person who was saying, I've been abused and I've never ever thrown anything. But I have the storm. Have you ever been drunk, or how often are you drunk? Because I would imagine when you're drunk, you're uninhibited, and then you do throw things. The thing that's quite weird with what you're saying is, are you saying Amber threw stuff? But what about Johnny throwing stuff? So Johnny throwing stuff doesn't matter. It matters that Amber threw stuff. Amber is a scapegoat. A lot of people have been saying that she's a scapegoat for COVID, that a lot of the frustration in terms of COVID, just the release went onto her. So if you've never been drunk, you can't really speak very intelligently about this case, because it's about constantly being drunk, constantly being high, and arguments within that maelstrom. And that's another part that just seems to have gone over everybody's head, is that these people are incredible substance abusers. Like, I'd probably be in hospital if I endured just a morning in the life of some of these people, just in terms of the substance intake. I just couldn't handle it. In fact, last night I couldn't sleep, and I poured a Jack Daniels, about so much, and I drank like a third of it, and it was so horrible that I threw the rest out, as expensive as it was. That's how poorly I tolerate whiskey. I have this one says, I've been drunk, just don't remember hurting anyone drunk. Well, believe me, if you're drunk often enough, you'll eventually hurt yourself or somebody else, or both. And higher, it's even worse. And if you mix the two, even worse. Okay, so let's go back to this article. The just world hypothesis is the belief that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, or that the world is fundamentally just. And strangely, people are most likely to invoke the just world hypothesis when the reality before them is unfair. So you may be in a relationship with someone and they're not treating you very well, but then you believe in the just world, like everything's going to work out. All of this is happening for a reason. It's not really very sensible. I think it's more sensible to believe that life isn't fair. Life is hard. Things are often unfair and unjust. That's actually more realistic. So if some of these victims and survivors had supported Amber only for her to lose, that sense of raw victimhood, of helplessness, of outrage would be awakened afresh. Just think about that for a second. If you're a victim or a survivor and you actually supported Amber, and maybe you did in the beginning, I don't know, but if you had supported her only for her to lose, that sense of raw victimhood, of helplessness, of outrage would be awakened afresh. It would be peeling away the scab. And so there was something soothing, I think, and reassuring in the denial of that. She's nothing like me. Well, now I'm reassured already. Now I've got a layer of protection. Johnny Depp has typically played the harmless rogue and lovable drunk to such an extent that he became essentially a Disney character. Not necessarily a character Disney even wanted until the Pirates franchise took off. That's the other part that I think is a very interesting psychology, is Johnny Depp acts as this lovable drunk. So it's almost like he's totally harmless. If Johnny is a little bit inebriated, he's charming, he's funny, he's nice, he's pleasant, it's interesting, it's amusing. All of it's part of this whole Disney fairy tale. The reality of someone who's drunk is not a lot of fun. The reality of someone who's high all the time is not a lot of fun. And one of the worst realities of drug addiction and drug abuse is paranoia. I've not experienced it as someone who's taken drugs. I don't take drugs, but I've experienced it through someone I know that's very close to me that has, and it's horrible. That paranoia is real. That paranoia is shocking. If you've never experienced it, you wouldn't believe it, put it that way. It's a whole different world that is out there, and they are literally living in a world of kind of psychosis. And to get them out of it, they've got to go on antipsychotic drugs. And the person that I spoke to just said, this person inhabited this whole world of characters and voices and all sorts of things. It's really disturbing, very, very disturbing. And a lot takes place within this disturbia that we just don't know about. So going back to the article, this is quoting from the article, quote, in rape trials, women jurors often invoke the just world hypothesis, right? This is jurors. In rape trials, women jurors invoke the just world hypothesis because they are overwhelmed by the ubiquity and unpredictability of sexual violence. It is terrifying to empathize with the survivor because it requires women to confront the possibility that they could be the next victim. Instead, women look for reasons to believe they are different from the survivor as a way to calm their fears and convince themselves they are safe as long as they make better choices. Because I'm a better person and I'm making better choices, I'm safe. That person who's worse than me, inferior to me, whatever, a liar, got what they deserve. Because I'm a better person, I'm safe. As part of this process, they may also focus their attention on empathizing with the perpetrator. This is women jurors in rape trials, right? This is not just talking in a airy-fairy way, like maybe this, maybe that. This is something that's been documented, right? And so as part of this process, women jurors may focus their attention on empathizing with the perpetrator. What could be worse than that? Which is less psychologically distressing than reckoning with violence. It is counterintuitive, but it can feel like an act of self-preservation in the moment. When problems feel too big for us to control, we often turn to denial to cope. Let me repeat that. When problems feel too big for us to control, we often turn to denial to cope. We minimize it, we make it less. Which is why Johnny sniggering and giggling and smiling and making jokes is a pleasant comic relief in the middle of all this tension. Which is why social media itself was also the same thing. So this pleasant comic relief in the middle of all of this harsh reality that we'd rather not think about. Let's have a look at some of your comments. What did Hybrid Places say? Not there, it says, never done drugs, not interested in weed either. Don't care for the demeanor of people on weed and drugs. Okay. Hybrid Places says, social media always goes too far. Elaine says, that is why Amber resorted to recording. Who would believe her? Yeah, who would believe her? Yeah. So it's like she records audio, but now why didn't you record video? Hybrid Pisces says she thinks he's a brilliant actor now, but he was a fat, washed up has-been a few years ago. Kim Amont says the pirate movies are a joke for children. Johnny has done far better roles in movies than that. I actually tried to watch one the other day and I just couldn't. I was just like, there were some scenes that were okay, but it was like, well, I guess I'm not the target market. Eye of the Storm says all of us have a right to want better and deserve to be respected. Absolutely. But, if you say that and you say, well, even if Amber is guilty and even if Amber got the justice she deserved, she doesn't deserve what was done on social media. She doesn't deserve these hashtags. That's the part that I find very odd, is like, if you don't like Amber Heard or you support Johnny Depp, or you think that what happened in court was just, if that's your position, then how on earth do you not criticize the constant humiliation and the deafening cacophony of abuse online? How do you not have a problem with that? And I definitely see a link with those two. And I think the answer is it's a way that you feel perhaps a sadistic pleasure that someone who's an aggressor is getting what they deserve in your mind or in your heart. Whether that's reality, I think, is a different question. Zircon says social media is mean. I Have the Storm says, I would never go out of my way to type or say something bad about something. Well, you are quite special then. I Have the Storm, you're a special person. And I hope you're getting out of or gotten out of whatever relationship you were in that was so awful. Linda says, I'll say it again, most victims of abuse tend to believe other victims. Yes, that are like you, that are, Linda, I think you need to read this article. The question is, why are so many survivors supporting Johnny Depp? And maybe the answer is the level of abuse you've suffered. Maybe it's not at the same level. I don't know. Not quite sure what the thing is. Yeah. So I Have the Storm says, I lived 44 years with an abuser. And I don't mean to be unkind when I say this, but Amber lived basically 15 months in a marriage, right? She was married for 15 months and she got out. Is that a sign that the abuse was mild or extreme? If you were married for 44 years, I mean, if one applies that to you, was the abuse mild? Why did you not get out, right? Just something to think about. Donna says, I'll never forget one time when our children were young. She was drunk and in a blackout, she threw all the dishes out of the cabinets and threw all the toys. It was horrific. So, Donna, I think there are different levels of what we're talking about. Violence within families, violence between couples. There's some where it is lots of screaming and shouting, but there are some where it is more than that. And I remember watching a series on Netflix. I think it was called Made, and in that series, if you should watch it if you haven't seen it, this woman went to a shelter, and somebody said to her, "They first hit next to you, right?" And then someone asked her, "Why don't you go to the police?" And she said, "Well," and then go through the whole thing of, "But did he hit you?" Right? So it only counts once he hits you. So now you must stay in a situation until he hits you. So she kind of left this guy before he'd hit her, but he'd hit next to her, kind of punched the wall kind of thing. And do you then say it's not abuse until he actually hits you kind of thing? And that was a very powerful movie for me because it showed that fine line between one person's reality of what abuse is and another person's reality of what abuse is. And I think that the answer to the question is, what qualifies as abuse? Well, when you realize I can't be in this relationship anymore, it might be, well, because I don't love the person, but if it's in terms of violence and mood swings, when it reaches a particular point, and some people have this threshold and other people have that threshold. Mine's quite low. In other words, like, if you are turning into not a very nice person, another person's become not a very nice person, why do you want to bother? But in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, it was like monsters, right? Why do you want to be with a monster, right? And it might be because they're both monsters, because when they're both on substances, they're both monsters. But I don't know whether you or I've experienced the monster level of that kind of relationship where everything is extreme. Remember, these are multimillionaires living a very extravagant lifestyle. Everything is excessive. The parties are excessive. The drug abuse is excessive. The violence, I guess, could be excessive as well. And so how much of that can you really identify with? My opinion is probably not a lot. I don't go on I don't go to Christmas to my own personal island. Do you? I don't live in a penthouse. Do you? I don't go to red carpet things. Do you? I don't have millions and millions of fans. Do you? I haven't made lots of movies and I'm a sex symbol. Are you? Kind of thing. And all of those are part of the fabric of this. So once again, I think what's going on here. So for me to try and understand what's going on here, I would prefer you guys to, even if one of you kind of listens to this and kind of goes, you know what, he's actually got a point, or you know what, I never really thought about it that way. That's quite interesting. That's actually revealed something to me about me. I never really thought about that. And if just one of you have that kind of epiphany, in a way, not that I'm right and you wrong, but a sense of you accessing kind of your pain body, you kind of feeling and absorbing and getting a sense of this is actually what's really going on. This is actually reality. And I think the reality here was a lot of people watching Depth versus Herd. It was a kind of a way of dealing with anxiety on the one hand, just raw anxiety, the anxiety of your own life, the anxiety of the post-COVID world, the anxiety of life that's happening right now that is uncertain and at times overwhelming. And so Depth versus Herd is like this weird series where you can explore some of those feelings and give vent to some of them. And so what you're doing when you are taking the one side is you're making it very simple. You're making it very black and white. You're making it very reductionist. And by doing that, you're controlling your anxiety. You're taking quite a complex thing and you're saying, you know what, she's guilty, she's lying, done deal, that's it. And that gives you a lot of comfort to do that, because it's much harder being uncertain in an uncertain world. It's much harder dealing with issues of it's not quite clear who's culpable and what's going on in an uncertain world. And we're living in a very uncertain world. And so I think this effort to control anxiety provides the key, certainly for me, to unlocking the psychological process that's taking place here. Although it's counterintuitive, especially from a male perspective, perhaps that is exactly the point. It is geared to counter the intuitive knowledge and realization of what may have actually happened to you, right? It's counterintuitive because it's geared to counter your intuitive knowledge of what has actually happened to you. And so you're countering that with this case. So going back to the article, she writes, quote, "For all of these reasons, it isn't surprising that so many survivors are taking Johnny Depp's side. It is completely consistent with the scientific literature. The scientific literature, this isn't speculation or this is my theory, right? It's completely consistent with the scientific literature on how some women navigate a patriarchal society in which violence against women is common," right? What we're talking about here is this is absolutely common. It's a default setting for how a lot of women deal with their survival in these situations within a patriarchal society, right? So again, if you don't live in a patriarchal society, you're not going to be able to identify with what we're talking about here. And a patriarchal society that I know about, for example, are the China has been described by some as, I don't know if it's the entire China. I'm talking about not Chinese people who come from China, but there's a sense that a lot of Asian society, and I don't mean Asians not living in Asia. I'm talking about South Koreans in South Korea, Japanese people in Japan, Chinese people in China. But a lot of Asian society is very patriarchal. That's no revelation. It's the same as to say Western society is very individualistic. That's not a revelation to say that. The society in Asian culture is very much patriarchal, but also kind of family oriented and community oriented. I think they call it Confucian culture. So you would sort of go and you would marry, a woman would marry a man and then go and live with his parents. And then that woman would then have to deal with her husband and his father and the wife of his mother-in-law, all of those patriarchal elements coming down on her. And in that situation, she doesn't have any power, but she's also got to kind of rationalize why what's happening to her is happening to her. But there are patriarchal elements in other societies. I'm not sure if the American South is more patriarchal, but I would imagine it is. In different countries, the patriarchal systems are different, but that definitely is something that's real. And Johnny Depp is definitely a patriarch in terms of his scenario. He's this very powerful male figure that's had a couple of wives. I mean, he was married to a makeup artist and had kind of a long relationship with Vanessa Paradis, but he's kind of this patriarchal figure with quite a few children, and he's got this whole army of people serving him, handlers and bodyguards and whatnot. He's this patriarchal figure, and everything kind of comes around that. And I think he's also from is Kentucky regarded as the South in America? Is it regarded as, is Kentucky a patriarchal state, or I just don't know. But if it is, that would be interesting. So I'm going to read this paragraph again just because I think it's quite a strong point. She says, "It isn't surprising that so many survivors are taking Johnny Depp's side. It is completely consistent with the scientific literature on how some women navigate a patriarchal society, patriarchal, male-dominated. The male is the power figure, the power structure, in which violence against women is common, but that doesn't make it any less painful for other survivors whose experiences are mocked and scrutinized in the process." So you may be thinking that this is nothing like what you've gone through, right? And there's a bit of a difference there and there and there with what Amber's talking about, and there and everywhere, right? And so it's nothing like what I went through, and so she must be lying. Well, have you been mocked in the past for what you've gone through? What do you think it's like for somebody else to be mocked? Just that on its own. Because this jury is saying it looks like there was mutual abuse. So she was abused, but now she's been mocked on top of that. Is that fair? Is that right? Is it okay for you to be mocked in your situation? So why is it okay for someone else to be? I would add that doesn't make it right. Right? I would add that your emotional reality and your need to deny it isn't the same as justice. So I don't know if this presentation, this live stream, I don't know if it's reached you. I don't know if it's at all altered your feeling, your heart, your mind. I don't know if it's sort of moved the dial at all. But if it has, then I would say, even though this person's saying that it's not surprising what's going on, and it's part of it's consistent with the scientific literature, I would add that doesn't make it right. And even if that's your emotional reality and that's your need to deny it, and that makes complete sense, that's not the same as justice. The fact that you feel you need to do certain things, that's not the same as justice. That's you dealing with your emotional reality in a way that's unjust. And I think in this sense, Lady Justice and ladies who truly care about justice must be brave. You've got to remove the blindfold. Remember, Lady Justice got a blindfold on. In a case like this, you've got to remove the blindfold and actually look at Amber's face and actually not care that she's looking at you or whatever. Look at her face, pay attention. And I noticed a lot of people saying that she didn't cry and that there were no tears. And that's not really paying attention. You've got a blindfold on. You don't want to see that, and you want to argue that it's not there. You want to be in denial because you've cried too. You've had tears too. And so you need to remove the blindfold, take the courage to see things for what they really are. I'm not saying it's easy. It's like facing fear is really not easy. It's not pleasant either. But you must remember, what you resist persists. What you deny also persists. Things that are allowed to hide in the dark fester and gain in power. And what you shine a light on, what you reveal, has got nowhere to hide. Does that make sense? Let's have a look at some of your comments. Johnny Blue, most of his Stephanie says, just what I've listened to so far has moved me. Okay, with a heart that's breaking. Amy Hall, Scout Mindset, absolutely. I must say that really summarizes my position in a nutshell, is when you're in a court situation, you should really have a scout mindset. A scout mindset is the opposite to a soldier's mindset. A soldier's mindset is you build a fortress, you build a wall, you defend your view, you dig in and you defend. You attack all comers, right? And I've seen that all across social media. I've seen that across the length and breadth of the Depp versus Heard trial, right? This intractable position, this need to set up like a fortification. The scout mindset is where you say, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what the lay of the land is. This is new terrain for me. I'm unfamiliar with where I am. I'm not sure where I am, so I'm going to go and scout, and I'm going to use my binoculars and look around, and I'm going to take notes, and I'm going to draw little maps, and I'm going to try and get a experiential sense of the landscape that I'm in. This is unfamiliar territory. I'm going to get to know it. And the only way I'm going to get to know it is by spending time in it, observing it, exploring it, running over it, absorbing it, what's the word? Looking at it and almost like an artist. An artist sort of stands somewhere on some kind of platform and he looks at the landscape in front of him, and he has a sense of its proportions and perspectives and scale and the scope of it all, right? And that takes quite a long period of looking and seeing, and all of that coming in, all of that being absorbed, right? And that's the scout mindset, where you say, I'm actually not going to make up my mind about this because I need more. I need information. And the more information I get, the more accurate my map's going to be. So I'm going to keep my mind open, and I'm going to just get all of this information. And at the end of it, I'm going to know where I am. I'm going to know where I am in this world that I've kind of started to scout through, right? But you don't get to know anything when you've got the soldier mindset, where you say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. This is my position, and I'm not going to budge from it. In fact, I'm going to shoot you down if you come towards me and if you say anything, and I'm going to, right, all that kind of thing. And that was something that was sorely lacking in the whole Depp versus Heard thing, where people made up their mind instantly. Someone's talking or testifying and they're being run down and things are trending and hashtags are being thrown up while it's happening. And I thought a trial is where one person presents their case and someone listens, and then someone else presents their case and we also listen, and then you kind of hold the two together and you go, and then you make up your mind and you kind of hold the two like scales and you see how they balance. Of course, there's a bit more complexity to that. There's a little bit of cross-examination and re-examination, but it's basically one person's version, another person's version. But you can't listen to it when you're already a soldier, right? And I get the feeling that this juror was already a soldier when Amber Heard started talking. That's the impression I get. When he says, well, I didn't like her emotions, and then did you stop listening? So it's like, if you in a scout mindset and you say, oh, jeepers, it's raining. Okay, I can't really pay any more attention here. It's not really what I want. It's not ideal. So I'm not going to pay any more attention. I'm going to stay where I am. I'm going to stick to this position. Beverly Lawyer says, not a Depp fan, but Amber Heard seemed phony, taping and feces in bed. She's not the perfect victim, and also if she lied 99% of the time, and you're not going to like this, but this is the legal aspect. If she lied 99% and told one truth about abuse, she should actually have won, because that's how defamation law works. The truth is an absolute defense of defamation, right? So if one of those 14 assaults, if one aspect of those 14 assaults was true, that would be enough. So what I find weird is, why were 12 enough for a UK judge, but not one was enough for a US jury? Let me say that again. 12 of the 14 assaults were enough to convince a UK judge, not 2 or 3 or 4, 12. Not one was enough to convince a US jury. That's a really big mismatch. That's very, very, very different. Okay. Susan says, I agree, but she lied 100%. I can't do anything. If your thinking is going to be that black and white, like, then yeah, then. So she lied 100% and Johnny Depp spoke the truth 100%. I don't think that's true of anybody that's ever lived ever in the history of the world, that someone has been 100% honest and someone else has been 100% dishonest. I don't know if that's ever been true of anybody in the history of the world. Brianna says there's a different defendant in the UK. It's the son. I really don't like that argument. It's like the UK case was completely different. Let me just... Brianna, have you seen this article? Maybe it's just something else to ignore. I don't know. But if you haven't seen it, I suggest you take a look at it. It was very, very, very similar, and that's what gets brought up over and over again. But yeah, if you still think it's so different, I'm not going to... Habitual line stepper says, I agree with the jury 100%. Okay. Oh, so I see the votes have come down a little bit. At one point it was 85, 86%. So around about a quarter of you, which is more than I would have thought, say that about 25%, 22% of you say you don't agree with the anonymous juror. I also don't agree with him. I don't think they did follow the evidence. I think if you're talking about emotions and that, I didn't like how she was crying, that's not evidence. So I don't agree with the juror. Also, when he says we weren't affected by social media, and you say only 4 of us were on Twitter, that's most of you. I doubt whether you went home and didn't look at Twitter, even if it wasn't to look at the case. I doubt whether you went home for 6 weeks and didn't look at Twitter once. And if you did look at Twitter, you would have seen those hashtags. And you just had to see the hashtag once to go, oh, you know what the whole world thinks? The whole world thinks Amber Heard is a liar, so I think the same thing. Who am I to disagree with what everybody thinks? Do I want to be humiliated on social media by going against what social media thinks? I doubt it. I doubt that's what the jurors wanted to do. The juror who went on to Good Morning America probably wants to be seen as a hero and as a celebrity, like the hero of social media. Yes, you didn't believe Amber. What an awesome guy you are. You are our hero. And I think that's also part of the conversation is that Depp versus Heard was about keeping Johnny Depp a hero. Because if we don't do that, what does that say about us? Because we've celebrated him as a hero our whole lives. We've put him up as a hero our whole lives. So what does it mean to take away someone's hero status? Doesn't that mean there's something wrong with us? Doesn't that mean that there's something wrong with our reality? Doesn't that mean there's something wrong with our culture, right? And that is what this live stream and the previous one that I did was about, a culture's wrath. That's what this is about. And that's also what was mentioned in Amber Heard's op-ed. I stood up to whatever and experienced a culture's wrath. This is it, the culture's wrath. The culture's wrath is real. Nisi says, I agree, Nick. If I was a juror, I would not want that 10 minutes of fame. No way. Well, one of these jurors did. Okay, Misa Mom, I'm a DV survivor. Can't believe how reckless and wrong you got this. Okay. Maybe time to unsubscribe like hundreds of others. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not credible. I'm out of here. Misa Mom, you should bear in mind that I found a lot of mainstream media articles. And I know that you probably don't read mainstream media because you're someone who's on social media. Social media is the new source for all information. Social media is the new news, right? Actually, it's not. Social media is not more credible than the mainstream media, even though people have got an idea that mainstream media is fake news. There's certainly aspects to it that is sometimes inaccurate. I mean, for example, CNN covering the Madeleine McCann case. I was like, do they even know how wrong they are about what's going on? So mainstream media do make mistakes. And but this idea, I'm someone who comes from a journalistic background. And I've never, ever in my life written something where I was like, I'm going to manufacture something that I know is not true. And so this idea that this entire news agency is fake and that one's fake, CNN, the New York Times, I don't know, MSNBC, that says more, I think, about you than it says about those news agencies. And it's sad because it shows you if you've lost faith in that, then where are you getting your news from, right? Where are you getting your news from? From social media. What does that mean? What means like exactly what's happened with the Depp versus Heard thing. It means justice is now and reality for you is now in the court of public opinion. Well, that means we're in a very precarious place, because the court of public opinion is a vicious, unstable, sadistic, misinformation maelstrom kind of thing. And a lot of people who formed opinions in this case were teenage gamers, young male gamers, 15 years old, 17 years old, who don't want to give their names. A lot of the people who shaped the public opinion of this trial, who were constantly humiliating people, don't want to say what their names are. It's a little bit of a hypocrisy, wouldn't you say? We're going to humiliate someone, but I'm not going to say who I am. Oh, okay. Carol says her story seemed absurd in too many ways. Her audio was damning to her. Okay, I think we're at about 2 hours. There was something I meant to touch on. I'm going to quickly go and get a magazine article and then I'll be back. Because I think this is quite important to mention. Brianna says social media is taking over the news. It is, in a bad way. Not there yet. It says, I don't think the op-ed affected much of anything. I never even knew about it, would have still watched a Depp movie. Puzzling. That's quite an interesting point. Okay, I'll be back. Just give me a second. Okay. Well, in the time that I was away, it looks like I gained 9 viewers. Seems like I must do that some more. So I'm going to quote from this magazine. It's called The New Scientist, and you can see there's the feature article is called Why, and then there are a couple of questions around that. And what I want to touch on is this article on, you can see the toxic information, right? Toxic information. And it's to do with climate change. And before too many of you leave, like, I don't want to hear about climate change, it's how this is conjured on social media, how the conversations on climate change have been recorded and measured, and the misinformation about climate change has been monitored on social media. And I think this is a very interesting analogy for the misinformation, the toxic information in terms of depth versus herd, right? And that's the part that I'm getting more and more concerned about, is social media becoming this shitstorm, this toxic cesspool, and something that is going to destroy society, right? So this article is written by Bill Posters in New Scientist. Let me just show you the magazine again. And it's called Toxic Information. It says, misinformation about climate change is polluting social media. Yeah, you can see like a guy walking there, and his head is like in a cloud of sort of toxic smoke, right? And it says, but that's why we have built an AI to try to expose and stop it. So they built artificial intelligence to kind of track the misinformation and try and figure out where it's coming from and what's happening. And this is the conversation I think is missing from depth versus herd. It is, we know there was the social media shitstorm, but how did it actually come about? Who was pulling strings? And how and why and what and who and how much, I guess. So I don't want to read the whole article, but he talks about there's a kind of climate pollution that we can't see clearly. It isn't in our rivers, lands, or skies. It is in our minds. When climate disinformation goes unchecked, it spreads like wildfire, exactly like with this trial. And then I'm going to jump further forward. He talks about campaigns at specific users based on what social media firms know about those people. Major oil and gas companies have spent billions of dollars over the years persuading consumers about their green credentials, when only 1% of their expenditure in 2019 was on renewable energy. So what this is showing is just how effective it is to control. It's like mind control, how easy and effective it is to control you could almost like say the world or the social media world, but through these influence campaigns. Remember, all of this is coming through your phone. So it's coming directly to you, right, in a way. So he goes on to say, this is known as corporate greenwashing. Still, fossil fuel firms maintain that their climate policies are responsible and in line with the science. To expose the scale of corporate greenwashing online, I was part of a team that recently launched echo-bot.net, co-created with artist Rob 3D Del Naja of the band Massive Attack and Dale Vince, a green entrepreneur. It's an AI, artificial intelligence-powered website. It ran through the COP26 Climate Summit. exposing climate change misinformation by releasing a series of data drops for heavily polluting sectors, including energy, agribusiness, and aviation. This is a part that's interesting. Academic definitions of climate disinformation and greenwashing were used to unearth posts across Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and visualize them on our website. And then it was flagged, and posts on the original social media site with a public warning. Then it says here, by digging into our data, journalists have already revealed that companies are targeting specific demographics in order to influence public perceptions about climate change and even alter government policy. One data drop focused on the 100 biggest fossil fuel producers, companies that have been the source of 71% of global carbon emissions. It found that 16 of these companies, listen to this is incredible, 16 of these companies ran 1,705 greenwashing and climate misinformation ads globally on Facebook and Instagram this year. That's 2022, right? That's not like one or two little campaigns. That's almost 2,000 campaigns, right? That's a lot. 1,705 greenwashing and climate misinformation ads on Facebook and Instagram. That's a lot of influence. In total, they spent more than £4 million creating influence campaigns and generated up to 155 million impressions, right? So do you think that this is not a strategy? Do you think that there's not a lot of money invested in trying to change people's minds? And the other thing is, do you think that people's minds aren't changing? They are. They are. And so through social media, somebody said very eloquently that whenever somebody tuned into the Depp versus Heard trial, they were gambling with their mental health. The same thing applies with social media. It seems like when you open up social media, you in a way gambling with reality, what your reality is going to be. And if you're at least a critical thinker, then somebody else is gambling and maybe losing that gamble. They may not even know that they are kind of in that. I know quite a few people who, we were really good friends and we saw eye to eye. And over the years, we've grown more and more apart. And a lot of that feels like because of the way social media's influenced their approach to lots of things. It's made them more political in certain ways, made them more open to conspiracy theories and distrusting of the news and, of course, trusting of social media. It goes on to say social medias could end most of the harms from climate disinformation, just as they could end the harms from what is happening during Depp versus Heard. If they wanted to, flagging systems were swiftly introduced to warn users of posts containing disinformation. It says here, it is true that Twitter and Facebook have both introduced climate science information hubs, but these are little more than PR exercises. And so it's not in Facebook or Twitter's interests to tell the truth. It's in their interest to make money. And if that's at our expense, so be it. If that's at the expense of the scientific reality, so be it. They make money. And that's why I would really like Elon Musk to buy Twitter, because I would imagine he would want scientific reality to be emphasized on social media. Then Bill Posters sort of concludes, he says, this epidemic of climate change disinformation on social media, right? This is just in terms of climate change, but he calls it an epidemic. He says, is eroding collective ideas of truth. And that, I think, is happening in a general sense. It's not just climate change. It's certain political realities, it's destroying society, as Lisa Wilson so well said. He says the surrealist painter René Magritte saw the purpose of art as one that attempts to see what is hidden by what we see. In this post-truth age of disinformation, we hope that the public, the press, and policymakers will be able to use our data findings to see what is hidden by what we see online. For the first time, we can witness the endemic scale of corporate greenwashing. The era of climate denial and delay is largely over, except on social media. So I find that really interesting, that there are many areas where we can be quite certain in a scientific sense and often in a legal sense about certain things, but not when you go into social media. When you go into social media, suddenly there's a different reality and nobody really cares about evidence, and people regurgitate the same explanations, and the standards for proof are very, very low. That's the difference between magazine journalism and magazine journalists and journalists, reporters, and social media opportunists. That's the big difference. Magazine journalists and journalists are taught to find credible sources, otherwise you can get sued. That's the irony of this whole defamation thing. It was written in order not to be sued, and the people that were on the jury, none of them were journalists or know anything about journalism. And the other side of it is the whole thing of saying Amber Heard retweeted the article with a title in it, so she defamed him that way. And then you say, oh, have you never done that? Have you never retweeted something? And if we had to go through the history of your social media, it would prove to be inaccurate, so you liable for defamation. Again, it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Anyway, Deirdre Hanlon, I really don't believe that Elon Musk will do anything but help build his business profile on social media. But you must remember, he's already talking about bots on social media. He's already complaining about that. And if he could just get rid of the bots, it would be a much happier and fairer place, I think. I think that's about it. I didn't really want to go over 2 hours. Eye of the Storm says Musk is dangerous. Okay. Eye of the Storm, we seem to not see very eye to eye. I think you must be new to the channel. I don't think I've seen you before, but anyway, we seem to mostly disagree. Status Quo says mostly agree, Nick. However, there's an underlying agenda many have recognized and many refuse to want to see. I have an insatiable interest in finding truths. Okay. Ricardo, thanks very much. I appreciate it. My last Van Gogh letter, I think I was on for 2 hours. Not a single super chat. It was quite painful. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Carol says some social media presence and presenters are clearly biased and spread misinformation purposefully to gain clout. And for greed, be careful what you listen to and who you believe. Okay, so do you guys want me to talk about a 15-year-old that went onto LawTube and how much money LawTube made of Depp versus Heard? Do you guys know about that? Do you guys know that there was a 15-year-old who was basically had a non-existent channel on Elden Ring and saw another kid do something and it got a lot of views that weren't in proportion to the number of subscribers, so he did the same thing. And it's a 15-year-old making short little clips with music, so no analysis whatsoever, just kind of having fun with things in depth versus hurt. In other words, no true crime analysis, no analysis at all, just kind of playing this sort of game. And he got millions of views. In other words, a 15-year-old gamer became a major influence on depth versus hurt, a kid that has absolutely nothing to say probably about domestic violence, probably no experience with it, absolutely nothing on his radar, right? Did you guys know about that? If you didn't, let me put a link in the chat if you didn't know about that. Are you guys, some of you guys reading this? Jenny says, thank you so very much for your valuable time and info. Pleasure. Status quo, thanks a lot for that. I hope I haven't guilted you into that contribution, but I appreciate it. Marigold says, I guess I'm late, but I'll always watch. Okay. Kenzel Culture says, Van Gogh is very niche. Yeah, it is. It is. Annika, as far as I know, Elon Musk hasn't paid, I think you mean 44 billion. As far as I know, he hasn't paid it. Donna says, Musk, I think, is exposing Twitter and the algorithms and which are flooded with paid bot farms. Yeah. I know about that as a South African. I know that a public relations company called Bell Pottinger, which is bankrupt now, but it was paid to influence politics in South Africa. And they try to get hashtags going like white monopoly capital, whatever that means, and radical economic empowerment. And they just got something like 70 people just keep tweeting it, and it worked. And it kind of created a huge amount of hatred between South Africans and enmity. And all of it was a political tactic to misdirect attention away from something else that was happening. So we've actually experienced it as changing, in a way, our political landscape, where it's all organized. And so the question comes up, was an organized campaign with Johnny Depp, and was it maybe too successful? And what I mean by that is, because the support for Johnny was like 99%, which just to me felt artificial. It's like, where's the 1%? Where's this other voice? It just seemed like it didn't seem completely natural. Maybe if you were on the side of that, it did. But normally there's at least a little bit of a small amount of like a counterculture, and even you didn't even have that. So where were they? And think about the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp. The last I heard, it had 20 billion impressions. 20 billion. I mean, the population of Earth is like 3 times less than that. So you're telling me every human being on Earth clicked on, every single human being on Earth, and I'm not one of them. Like I didn't put up hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp, so I'm one of those human beings out of the system, right? So you're telling me every other human being on Earth put up Justice for Johnny Depp and did it 3 times, every single person. Seems a little bit unlikely, I think. Misa Mom says, where does truth belong here? What do you mean? Karina says, I thought Elon Musk is of South African heritage. Yeah, he went to school here. He grew up here. He left South Africa when he was about 18 years old and went to Canada. I think part of that was to avoid military service. It is quite an amazing thing that just on paper, so if you don't like Amber Heard, like you say, whatever you say about Amber Heard, it is quite amazing that this particular woman dated kind of the richest man on Earth. It's like that alone is quite an achievement in a way, would you say? achievement's probably the wrong word, but I just think it's an interesting aspect. I think it's a bit unfortunate that Elon Musk didn't testify. The Storm says, hey, Timmy. Timmy, say hi. Yeah, it's just quite cold here. Heebie-jeebie says, perhaps Amber supporters were afraid to speak up for fear of being bullied. I think that's true. I think they were bullied, and also you could have your channel very quickly stripped down. In my channel, for example, very, very quickly lost subscribers. In fact, my channel was at 86,000, almost 800, and I probably lost about 550 subscribers. That sounds like it's not a lot, but you must remember the additional people subscribing, right? So there are people subscribing, but then the cumulative amount is minus, say, 550. So it's actually closer to 1,000 or whatever it is. I also sometimes try to limit the damage. If I saw a video at like minus 15 subscribers or minus 50, then I would make it members only for a while, just to interrupt that whole process. I've also not covered the Depp versus Hurt trial the way I would cover other things. I mean, there was a point where I wasn't interested in it at all, and then there was a point where I thought I've really got something to say and I really want to address certain things, and I was just like, well, I'm being shut down. I'm being shut out. Even on Patreon, I got the same thing. So that's also a first for me, where I felt the power of social media as a real shitstorm. And if you're not part of the shitstorm, well, then it's going to be quite damaging to you. It's going to be financially damaging, and it's going to be damaging in other ways. Oh, you're not credible. There's a gamer who makes 150,000 a month of the deficit commentary. Unreal. Well, I think I saw one that made. Okay, well, 150,000 a month is a lot. I think I saw, maybe it's the same one, but there's someone who made $180,000 off Depp versus Heard. That's not bad. Well, it's not in terms of income. So I'm going to deal with this, and then I'm going to end it. LawTube made megabucks during Depp versus Heard plus something else. So we all know that LawTube raked in a lot of dosh during Depp versus Heard. This is the part I find kind of quite troubling. You have law channels and legal experts giving their professional opinion, supposedly. Supposedly, this is me giving you my professional opinion, but it's in exchange for money, right? I'm giving you my professional opinion about Depp versus Heard, but guess what? I'm also going to get money for it. If I say something that is basically what you want to hear, basically about Johnny Depp in a favorable light or Amber Heard in an unfavorable light, then I'm going to get money. But don't worry, I'm a law expert, and what you're hearing is my professional opinion. I really is it. We all know if that opinion wasn't pro-Depp, they didn't make any money. My channel being a prime example. I can tell you now, the month that's just gone by is the worst earning month my channel has had in 2 years, about a year and a half, 2 years. What does that tell you? What's different about this month compared to all the others? We all know that if opinions were anti-Amber Heard, YouTube incentivized or rewarded those positions. So just how professional, ethical, and honest are these law channels? Let me ask you a question. Someone who knows the law knows that one has to give the benefit of innocence and also the right of reply, the right to be heard to a party, and in this case, both parties, before a verdict is reached. That tends to be the main like that's basic. That's really, really basic. Is you also learn this as a law writer or a legal journalist, that you need to, you can have your opinion, but you really need to hold back feelings about absolute guilt or innocence right until the end, once you've heard everything. And so in this case, both parties, before a verdict is reached, you're getting pronouncements of guilt and innocence. You've also got the lawyers that are doing the same thing as teenagers. You see them in the side of the screen, and you may think it's completely normal, and you may think it's completely of an appropriate standard. But yeah, you've got a case taking place, and you've got the lawyers sitting in and also mocking and saying, I don't believe this or that, in a case like this, and it's about defamation. I don't know, I just found it incredibly insensitive. So if Amber Heard files an appeal and wins subsequent to now, just food for thought. If Amber Heard files an appeal and she wins, what will we say about LawTube and its position then? What do you say then? Would you just have such a short attention span that it doesn't matter what was said, and now you just go on to the next thing? In my opinion, while some said that my channel discredited itself during Depp versus Heard, I think the opposite is true. I wasn't incentivized by money, and I wasn't incentivized by what everyone else thought. I just thought what made sense to me, and I was very much aware of the UK trial, and I thought that was a fair verdict. And I thought you would have a similar outcome, all things being equal, in America, and it wasn't. There wasn't a similar outcome. And so I guess I learned a little bit about American juries. In my opinion, the internet and social media and LawTube showed its true colors. That's my opinion. I think I'm going to conclude with this. Let me ask you guys a question. Has Amber Heard been fired from Aquaman 2, yes or no? See what you guys say about that. Shall I put the question in chat? Has Amber Heard been fired from Aquaman 2? Yes or no? Sharon says no. Jessica says no. Karina says yes. Susan says yes with a big capital yes. Misa Mom says, I don't know, not important. It is quite important. You'll see why. Sorry, that was actually supposed to be a question. So the way I really want to put this down is Amber Heard has been fired from Aquaman 2 / Amber Heard hasn't been fired from Aquaman 2. And this actually came up 3 days ago. Right, and it basically was that Amber Heard's been fired from Aquaman 2, and it went right around the world, and social media was talking about it, and people were cheering and awesome, justice, whatever, and then it turned out that wasn't true. A lot like the fake juror. Fake juror says stuff, great, awesome, and then when he goes away, okay, we're not really going to talk about that. So I think this is a really good demonstration of bias in action. And again, you got, there were some channels, I'm not going to name them, but they describe themselves as fact-driven. These are true crime channels. They describe themselves as fact-driven and unbiased, and they repeated this rumor. Do I need to repeat the word rumor in order to emphasize that's what it was? Rumor, rumor, rumor. And so I'm a fact-driven, unbiased channel, and I'm going to repeat the rumor that Amber Heard has been fired from Aquaman 2. And so obviously that's going to be good for my channel. All the people who hate Amber are going to be watching it and like, oh, wow, Amber's been fired. Well, that's just as great. But it's actually a rumor. And you're a fact-driven, unbiased channel. So why are you repeating rumors? I thought you're fact-driven. I thought you're unbiased. And so one particular channel with a presenter that I really respect, and a presenter that's got a law background and seems to have pretty high standards. She brought up that Amber Heard has been fired, and she was then corrected by one of her own hosts. I'd like to be more specific about it, but then I get into trouble. I'd like to be more transparent that it's this person and that's where it happened, but then I would get into trouble. So I'll just speak generally. And so she's then corrected by one of her own hosts. And what her own host says is she talks about the credibility of the anonymous source who suggested this. And I think the anonymous source was a website called Just Jared, right? Like a tabloid celebrity type thing. Do you guys want me to put the link to that? Let's see if it's still there. Just Jared. I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so this is the article from June 14th that, and then you'll see the updates in it. So you're basically quoting from Just Jared, not from CNN, not from New York Times, but of course that's all fake news. And so you're going to put that in your story, and everyone's going to talk about that. And so this person on the show spoke about the credibility of the anonymous source. This is just another great example of telling the salivating, vicious crowd out there exactly what they want to hear and getting 1 million views, only for it to turn out either not to be true or untrue at the time. And it seems like it's not true. Now, compare that to putting up a dull, boring story that the rumors aren't true, where you say, Amber Heard's not fired from Aquaman 2. So, and I thought of doing that. I thought of putting up a video saying that. And I was just like, I'm not going to bother, because that's kind of what happens. One channel puts up exclusive or breaking news, or like someone showing the shocked expression, like, right? And they have that on the picture, right? This. And then they say, Amber Heard cut from Aquaman 2, and everyone clicks on it, and it gets 2 million views, but it's not true. But nobody really cares. And they then don't take that video off of YouTube. It stays there. And so Amber Heard is cut from Aquaman 2, except it's not true. If I had to put up a video, maybe I'd get 1,000 views or 2,000 views, and no one would really care about that either. It's like, right? And so why are these supposedly legitimate, fact-based, unbiased channels, why are they doing this? Well, isn't the answer because they're trying to make money? Do they really not know, or do they really not care that this isn't true? Something else that's interesting is Jason Momoa seems to have been playing both sides during the trial. I thought that was quite interesting. And I really like him, I must say. I like his character, and I like, I guess that's all I know. But he seems like a nice actor, I guess. But in terms of this, I thought it was quite interesting. He seemed to be playing both sides because he was following Johnny Depp on Instagram, and that made the news. And then also after the verdict, liking the statements from both Depp and Heard after the verdict. I mean, you can't be more diplomatic than that. You can't be more safe than that, can you? And so I thought that was kind of predictable but poor form. Possibly he was advised to take this position. Possibly it wasn't just Jason Momoa kind of acting out of his own personality. It's possible he was advised to take this position from his own publicist and maybe even Warner Brothers. Maybe Warner Brothers said, we need you to do this. We need to keep you completely safe, kind of thing. So I think for those of you who thinks that the Depp versus Heard thing is ridiculous and dumb and not worth paying attention to me, the trial itself, a lot of the substance of that to me wasn't really worth paying attention to, but some of the larger legal issues and the larger media issues and the larger legacy aspects of, to me, quite fascinating, because it's not like Johnny Depp won and now life goes on back to normal. It's not over. The legal story continues, right? So think about this. If Amber Heard is recast, so at the moment, so let me just put down the article from Variety, which this is a credible news source, Just Jared isn't. Or let me put it this way. Variety is a more credible news source in general, and I think this particular article proves it, than Just Jared. Is that a fairer way of putting it? So so there you can see that there's no substance to that. But let's just play devil's advocate and say, what if there was? What if a week from now, a month from now, 6 months down the line, Amber Heard is recast and she goes on to win an appeal, right? So her role is recast, she's taken out of Aquaman 2, but then at the same time she goes on and she wins the appeal. Now she's in a legally strong position to say, that's wrongful dismissal. You shouldn't have taken me out of the movie. I didn't do anything wrong, whatever it is. I'm just saying, imagine if this takes place, right? So if she wins an appeal, maybe she won't, but let's say she does, she'll be in a position to potentially sue the studio now for something akin to, I'm not sure what it would be, wrongful dismissal, whatever it is, damages of some sort, right? The fact that Amber's already shot the scenes, so it's not like Aquaman 2 is still being in production. Everything has been done. So if the studio, after everything's been done and everything has been settled, interfere with a script and change and recast, Amber really will be able to say, you made a decision based on or not based on X, Y, Z, right? And so I think the fact that Amber's already shot the scenes means whatever happens next will be interesting. Then, and again, this is when you've got the scout mindset, when you take the thinking even more laterally than that, and you take Amber outside of this calculus and you kind of say, what are we really talking about here in the cinema sense, in the industry, the movie industry sense? What is actually going on? I don't know how well you guys know the DCEU. It's basically the DC Comics universe. I don't know if you know much about that versus the MCU, which is the Marvel Comics universe. The Marvel Comics universe is stupendously successful, has been really absolutely dominating this battle, and the DCEU has been struggling. And the most successful DCEU movie is basically Aquaman. It's like their most successful DCEU movie, right? The most successful MCU movie, that's Marvel Cinematic Universe, is Avengers, right? But it's far more successful than the most successful DCEU movie. I think the most successful Marvel movie is approaching $3 billion. The most successful DCEU is like 1.1 billion. Still very, very big numbers, right? I think there's one or two. There's the Joker movie, but that's not really part and parcel so much of the DCEU in terms of the sort of comic universe. It's kind of a standalone, right? So that's in a way an exceptional thing. But bear in mind the following facts. Aquaman was the DCEU's big breakthrough film, so they must be really sad. And, in terms of like, this is their big blue chip money making cash cow. And there's all of this fraud concern around it. There's all of this dodginess around it. What do you do, right? And you might think, I don't know, what's it, 4 million people signing the petition to get Amber Heard thrown off. I don't know if that's really a large number. Maybe it is. But for a movie that's made 1.48 billion, I'm not sure if it's that significant. But Aquaman, the movie with Amber Heard in it, I think she was paid $1 million for a role, which to me is not really very much. $1 million for a movie that made 1.48 billion. It's the 24th biggest movie of all time. So the stakes are kind of pretty huge. And now it seems whatever they do, this is in terms of Warner Brothers, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they leave her in the movie, and they're damned if they don't. The question, I think, is in what way are they damned less? In what's going to hurt their bottom line less? I think that's the one question. I think the other question is, what's ultimately right in this? What is the legal likelihood likely to be? And I do think they factored into, in terms of what Hollywood decided, I think Hollywood definitely looked at the UK trial verdict. I think that played a role. I think it played a role in Hollywood's attitude to Amber Heard and also to Johnny Depp. And Hollywood, I think, has got a slightly different attitude to both of them, which I think is also interesting. So I think things could certainly change for better or worse over the next few months between now and the movie's release in March next year. And that on its own is going to be quite interesting. One possibility is for the studio to actually back their actress, to put money behind her in order to win back the court of public opinion. So they may try and generate an influence campaign of their own, who knows. But that means a face-off against Depp fandom, which is a substantial movie fan base in itself. The difference may come down to which of these stars ultimately, potentially, still has a future in the movie business based on Hollywood's assessment of that. And I think that is a very weird chess game that's going on around this case, which also makes it quite interesting. There's quite a big high stakes thing going on beyond the court case itself, and money that's also, that's also to be made or potentially lost. Well, I can't believe I'm at 2 hours 43. I was really like thinking this would be a 90-minute spiel. Okay, I think I'm going to sign off now. Just look at some of your comments. Jason Momoa played the main role in Aquaman. He plays the central character. Amber Heard plays kind of the love interest, but she's almost like, I don't know. There's kind of like, I don't even think they kiss in the movie. So it's almost like there's a prickly relationship going on between them, where she's sort of like royalty and knows her way around, and he's an amateur who's reluctant to get involved, kind of thing. So, Elaine says, thoroughly enjoyed, time flew. Well, that's good to hear. Thanks, Elaine, for being here. Linda says, I predict Johnny Depp will win an Academy Award in the next 10 years. Well, okay. Jenny Friedman says, I'm so happy for you. Not everyone can or wants you to do that. Working a side job is, okay, so that's just some side chatter. Zircon says, no jury on appeal. That's very interesting. That's definitely very interesting. If you have an appeal and you have the pure merits of the law being discussed, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Status Quo says, a male in a sea of females here in the channel living in the US and hardly disagree with your view as myopic. That's to Hilly P. Hilly P says, to pick sides in this fight is childish. They both were abusive and both lied. Hilly, I agree with you. I think it's something we need to try and practice more. We live in a world that is very dualistic and very binary. And we need to be more, and I'm speaking kind of specifically to do with the way we think, not think in absolutes. What happens when you do think in absolutes? You jump to conclusions and things can seem a lot worse than what they are. Mass shooters think in absolutes, and mass shooters are binary. It's like binary opposition. Do you want to be a mass shooter? We need to be more able to, like democracy is founded on different layers and different levels of kind of nuance. You know what I'm saying? Binary opposition is the opposite of that. It is taking the middle road. Think about two parents, good parents, who have young children, right? You can't have parents choosing to be on the side of one child or the other. And, children can sometimes be in binary opposition to one another. He did that, or I want the bigger piece, or whatever. The parents have got to take the middle road and try and be fair. That's what we've got to do. We've got to be parents to our own inner child. We mustn't give in to the reptile. You know what I mean? We've got to, I just want to thank Titanic Discussion says, come on, my fellow viewers, let's buy Nick dinner. He put serious time into this. Thanks a lot, Titanic Discussions. I think you left a really good comment on my previous video asking about Sydney, right? Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Jenny Friedman says, thank you, Nick, appreciate your forum. So I want to thank you guys. There was a period early on where I felt like I'm going to get out of here. It's too hot in the kitchen. But a lot of you made me feel at home, even those who disagreed with me. And I appreciate that ability to agree to disagree, or to disagree nicely. And I really appreciate you listening to me. And especially if you feel, well, I think you're completely wrong on this, but I'm still prepared to hear what you have to say. That is a sign of great maturity and I think intelligence. They say intelligence is the ability to keep two opposing thoughts in your mind at the same time, right? And that's what this is where I've also got to look at some of the things you say and be nice about it, right? Not binary in the opposite direction. And that makes us into a community to the extent that we can see things differently, but still get along. We are a community, and that's what's important to me. And I think that's also what's important to you. Angela Gallagher, wow, thank you very much. Thanks, Nick. I always trust your judgment. I appreciate that. Okay, guys. I'm not sure which of my mods are still here, but Sky, who's in the UK, is still here. Misa Mom says, I made a decision. That sounds that sounds ominous. Misa Mom has made a decision, guys. Are you ready for it? Nisi says, love this intelligent community of TCRS. Nisi, it's really good to have you here. I did read your comments on Patreon, and you've just got such a great heart. So always appreciate you. Bria says, so well said. Also good to have you here, Bria. Bria's from France, by the way. Karina, thank you. Is Stephanie still here? I'm not sure if Stephanie's left us. Stephanie, I know she was driving, but I'm not sure if she still is. But Jenny says, Titanic discussion, wish I could do more. You're amazing to do this. Stephanie had to go. Okay. Well, I'm going to go now. Thanks very much to those who've joined. If you're watching this and you're not part of the live stream and you want to, if you're feeling thankful or grateful or appreciative, don't be shy to hit the thanks icon. I hope you guys are going to read some of the links I put in the chat. If you are interested in the links and you're not getting them or you're not sure where to find them and you're watching this after the time, ask me, leave it in a comment, and I'll provide the article for you. So just ask for it in the comment and I'll provide it there. Oh, Stephanie is boating. That sounds like fun. You know what? We are close to the, if you're in America or in the Northern Hemisphere, we are just a few days away from the longest day of the year. That's the 21st of June, 21st, 22nd. And the shortest night of the year, or where I am, we're approaching the shortest day of the year and the longest night. And it's really, really cold. And often the coldest day of the year follows about a week or two after the longest night. So looking forward to getting through that. Karina says, bye my sweet and wonderful TCRS family, Austria over and out. Karina, by the way, I saw a beautiful video on a triathlon channel called Team Charles Barkley, talking about the Red Bull headquarters and someone who's injured who went to the Red Bull headquarters in Austria and was just showing footage of her swimming in these crystal clear lakes, and it just made me really want to go there. So I might sort of pop into your neck of the woods one day and just be like, hi, I'm here. I actually did go skiing once in Austria, and I think it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world and also one of the most underrated. I'd love to go there and swim in those lakes and hike around there. Okay, yes, after the solstice. Status Quo says good tidings all. Misa Mama, I don't know what your decision was. If you made it, I missed it. Angela Gallagher says, I'm jealous, it's super hot. Well, I wouldn't mind some of that heat coming this way. Karina says, I would love it. Well, who knows? Okay. 100 here too with high humidity. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. All the best.